Hey everyone. Hey, welcome back to the Data Ideas Podcast. This is Dustin. Super excited to be joined today by Eric Soden, who has a really impressive career in the data and analytics field. And I'm excited to get to know him a little bit more and his company and everything that he does. Eric, welcome.
Yeah, appreciate it. Dustin, appreciate you having me.
Yeah, for sure. Eric, do you want to kind of just give the listeners kind of a feel for what you're doing currently, and then we can go back into some of your background?
Yeah, sure. So I started a company called Capitalize Consulting about 10 years ago with a business partner of mine with really the focus of bringing better business intelligence at the time, right? We talked a lot about business intelligence 10 years ago and dashboarding, and then that became more self-service analytics. So a lot of what we focus on is process automation, analytics, upskilling of people who want to get into this space. And that those are the primary areas that we focus. Again, it's all around data. We don't. I always tell everybody, if you need a security expert, well, that's not us. If you need an infrastructure expert, that's not us. Unless it fits in the data realm, we can help you stand that up. But if it's data, if it's process automation, especially process automation as it relates to moving data around, that's where we play. We've got about 90 people scattered across the United States. We've got offices pretty much all over the place, but our key offices are Dallas, Houston, Denver, and Toronto, and then we have people out to the coasts as well. So as far as who we partner with, we partner a lot on the vendor side with companies like Alteryx, Tableau, Power BI, UiPath. We Workday on the adaptive planning side. We partner with Blackline on the accounting automation side. So a lot of the technologies that you would think about as it relates to key data and process automation type technologies. And then it's just a question of which technologies do people need for which groups and what the projects they're trying to do. And we have people who code in Python and React and other different areas there as well. So yeah, what we try to do is figure out what's the best technology, what's the best technology stack, not even just for a particular project, but also for the organization, because just because somebody else could code it in C doesn't mean that that's the right technology for
Sure.
you. Just because somebody could do it in Talent or Informatica doesn't mean that that's the right technology for you. And so making sure that we're looking at the project, we're looking at the vision and the goals of the companies, and then we're really aligning the technological expertise as well as the enablement plan for people so that they can support the types of things that they want to be doing.
Cool. Awesome. And so lots going on there. So you've built, you've helped build this amazing company with, you said 90 plus, folks working
Yeah,
with different
pretty fun.
tools and in different industries on different use cases for data, which is awesome. It probably took a lot of passion to build a company, that does all of
Sure.
that. How, if we went back to square one, what was it about data and analytics that you were so interested in?
Yeah, get myself in trouble here a little bit, but so when I graduated with an MIS degree, and I started my career in IT. And what I initially found right away was that IT it's looked at as sort of a necessary evil in a lot of cases.
Yep.
And as I worked with business users and different projects that I had, even in my internships, the closer I could be linked with the business, the more, I guess, the more gratification that came from it, the happier I was because I felt like I was solving challenges. I always tell everybody, IT people have a tough job because no one ever calls you and says, "Oh man, I can't believe email has been up for the last 2.5 years." It's 2.5 years in one day when email goes down that you get the phone calls, and they're not
Right.
pleasant phone calls, right?
Right.
Nobody's happy that Salesforce is up. They're only unhappy when it's down. Nobody's happy when the website's up. They're only unhappy when it's down. And so IT, it's a bit of a it can be a little bit of a grind for
Yeah, for
folks.
sure.
Even security, right? Nobody's happy that you haven't had a security breach in 5 years.
Right.
It's you're fired when you're on the front page of the paper because you had a security breach. And so that, as I worked with the businesses, when I was doing BI, when I was doing reporting and analytics and getting data back to the business, those were the times when it was like, this is awesome, you're the bomb, whatever. And so I was like, oh, well, I really, this is much better for me. And anyway, so I continued down the journey of business intelligence. So I started with, things like Informatica and business objects and crystal decisions and things like that. And then again, over the years, those things have transitioned to, I was worked at Cognos for a while, and then
Hmm.
after Cognos, started Capitalizing, have really focused again on how do I help people get the data they need faster. And the technologies come and go, and they change a bit here and there, and they get more advanced, right? If you look at the current chat GPT, is some of the stuff is crazy, and like where the stuff will head up.
Totally.
Is pretty insane, and Python didn't exist not too long ago. Now all of a sudden it's all anybody's talking about in the analytics space from a coding perspective. So it's really interesting. But in the end, the challenges have been the same as long as I've been in the business. It's if you're in the business side, everybody's doing everything in Excel. So someday I'm curious to see if that'll ever change.
Yeah.
But then there are other technologies that we can plug in places to make things more efficient, more analytical, better data driven decisions. All the things that we hear about all the time. But yeah, that to me is what drove me towards it, is when the business users want to give me a hug because I've been able to uncover something or get them things they haven't
Right.
been able to do, or automate a process that used to take them 8 hours and now it's a button click or just happens in the background. And for them, it's almost like magic. And then, some of the things more recently that we've seen with some of these self-service tools like Tableau and Power BI and Alteryx, you start to see not only am I able to do it for them and get them excited, but now I'm able to teach them how to do it and get them excited,
For
and then
sure.
empower them to be able to do it. And that's like a whole different aspect of the journey that's been a blast in the last, I don't know, 3-4 years or whatever.
Totally. That's awesome. Yeah, I like the statement you made about the business users wanting to give you a hug. I always know that I've been successful when I can start to see that the individual that I'm working with went from kind of skeptical to the point of where they're like my new best friend.
Yeah, yeah,
Right. It's a really rewarding process to go
yeah, it
through for
is.
any, and if you like it, and you're into solving problems and you're motivated by getting someone to that point, like there's nothing like it, in terms of reward. Yeah.
No, it's and then then the floodgates open, and that's take it back to starting Capitalize. I always tell everybody
Yeah.
the hardest thing is getting people to work with us the first time. The
Yeah.
second, third, fourth, fifth time, it's super easy,
Right.
because once you crush a project and
Yeah. New best
they
friend.
see the results, it's like holy crap.
Yeah.
Like doctors, lawyers, right? Plumbers. You don't want them on staff necessarily, but if you have a plumbing problem, you want to know who to call, and you want to know that they have your back. They're not going to gouge you. They're going to be
Right.
responsive. They understand your situation, your problems, and they're going to come quickly. Whether that we joke about lawyers all the time, but when you need one, you want to know that you're getting the right one. They've got your
For sure.
back. When you need a doctor, you want to know you got the right one. They have your back. In the world of IT consulting and analytics consulting and whatever, it's the same basic idea for us. I need to earn that trusted advisor, trusted partner status with people, so that they know whether they need me right now. They might not, right? Their toilet's not overflowing, they don't need me right now, they don't need the plumber. But when all of a sudden it is, and there's an emergency, or somebody quits, or there's a new project, or they make an acquisition, or whatever it is, rest assured, Capitalize and team will jump in and do the right thing for the right reasons and help you guys get through this. And whether that's a new revenue generating scheme, a new acquisition that needs to be happen, new consolidations, reconciliations, whatever it is, kind of doesn't matter. But you call us, and it's gonna go well for you.
That's awesome. Very cool. I love the passion too, that I can just hear it in your voice as you're talking, that you have for helping organizations and individuals to conquer these challenges, because there is a big opportunity that still exists. There's an awful lot of challenges to overcome.
Yeah,
And
and new
think about it.
technologies, more data. The it's like as fast as we catch up, the world changes. So it's a I guess it could be a little bit daunting, because it's a bit like a hamster wheel, right? It's like how long until we solve all this?
Right.
Well, you look at the speed at which we're building data. Now the problem is we got too much data. It used
Right.
to be we didn't have enough. Now we have too much.
Yeah.
And it's like, now how do you even sift through it? How do you query it? How do you query 100 billion records and get
Yeah.
performance speed? Well, it's a whole different challenge. So yeah, and then you add in more analytics algorithms, and all these different sensors and things. And so the challenge remains kind of the same. It's how do I take all of this and make good decisions? How do I propel my career? How do I propel my company? How do I propel my area, my division, whatever? Reduce costs, increase revenues. It's all the same challenge, It's
Hmm.
just the world changes, everything gets more intricate and interesting, and now we have to figure out how do we how do we react, because our competitors are doing something to make their businesses more efficient. So we have to do it things to make our business more efficient, regardless of if you're in banking or if you're in, if you have a law firm. Whoever figures out, whichever of the big four, as an example, figure out the most efficient way to do it. If it's drastically more efficient, they'll
Hmm.
become the big one. So the
Absolutely.
big
Competitive
four are
barrier.
fighting with each
Mhm.
other, and whoever's number five is fighting with to try to become part of the big four. And it's a constant, continuous improvement process. And the people who do continuous improvement and continue to fight the good fight and find the best solutions and do things more efficiently and faster and better are the ones that end up on top, right? And you see it time and time again. So
Yeah,
it
for
never
sure.
ends. It never
No,
ends, which makes it fun. It also
I
means that
love
I should have a career until I want to be done.
it. Yeah, absolutely.
You and me both, Dustin.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So there's all these new tools and new techniques and everything, landscapes changing every week, month,
Yeah.
quarter, what's on your mind right now in terms of, gosh, this is a tool that, let's use the big four example, if you were one of the big four, what's the top tool or top thing that would be on your mind as a leader if you were looking to leverage your data, in a way where you're going
Sure.
to get some a quick return out of it?
Yeah. I mean, it's a big question.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I think there's a lot of different places that you could spend time. You have large scale IT industrial complex type solutions, which like data lakes and data warehouses and cloud data analytics and all that sort of stuff. And that stuff
Hmm.
I think is super important, and people have to spend a lot of time on. Where we spend a lot of our time is more what I would call functionally focused.
Yep.
So how do we help accounting? How do we help tax? How do we help finance? How do we help internal audit? How do we help marketing? How do we help sales operations? How do we bring those people along with us? Because the truth is, I can walk into 100 organizations, and 100 out of 100, if I walk around enough, assuming this organization has more than 500 employees, I will find people who are doing things inefficiently in Excel or copying and pasting things and moving things around and doing it every single month, every single day, every
Yep.
single week. And so, but a lot of the folks don't even know it's possible. And
Right.
so what we have seen over the last, quite a few years is, if you look at the makeup of Capitalize 4 years ago, it was almost all IT type practitioners. If you look at us today, it's about a 50-50 split of subject matter experts who came from
Right.
accounting or tax or HR, who leveled their skills up with analytics tools like Tableau, Power BI,
Yep.
Alteryx are the ones that pop to mind the fastest. And then they say, well, holy crap, I like accounting just fine. I like HR just fine. But what I really like are solving these data challenges. And then they tap me on the shoulder, I tap them on the shoulder, and the opportunity arises. And now they
Mhm.
work at Capitalize, helping other companies solve challenges
Got it.
using data and process automation. So, um, so again, depending upon if you look at some of like the data lake technologies and the sensor technologies and IoT and all that on that side, we do that, but that's not probably where I would say our core focus is. Our core focus is on helping those functional areas upskill, be more efficient, really make drastic changes to the way people are making decisions and building processes and automating processes in the within the organization, but at the
For
functional
sure.
unit.
Yeah. So I think like if you're a leader of an organization, I personally like, if my organization wasn't that data driven today, I think based upon what you said, like I'd be most interested in just like, where is the catalyst to get people interested, in to start out with, like where they can get more efficient, but then once they can get more efficient, like to your point, the light bulb goes off of like, oh, we could do use case A, B, and C, and then it kind of is like it's a fire gets started and it grows and grows and grows, and so
Yep.
from my standpoint, I think I would kind of be looking for, where is that catalyst point, and how do we get that ignited? And
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the truth is, and this is what I tell my team, my back office team. I say, if you spend 20 minutes in Excel on something you're going to have to do more than once, we need to hit the pause button and figure out a better way to do
Right.
it.
Yeah.
To me, the low-hanging fruit is not in IT. IT is set up to conquer the most complicated challenges ever, and they have been for a long time.
Right.
So their level of intensity is already very, very high. So
Yep.
we're talking about going from 80% to 90% in IT or something, right? When you look at at accounting, tax, finance, HR, sales ops, stuff like that, those folks, it's not there yet. They're not to 80% efficient.
Right.
They're still all of them. I'm dumbfounded, but all of the ones that we haven't helped, right? But no, are maybe 30% efficient. And the low hanging fruit exists in the office of the CFO. There's so many between invoicing, receiving invoices. Some of that stuff comes in emails and PDFs. Some of it still comes via faxes. I mean, that stuff comes in and it comes in fast. You think if you get 100,000 invoices a month, that wouldn't be crazy for a large organization. How do they go from 100,000 invoices to that stuff's in their GL, all booked, properly reconciled, auditable, and ready to go? The process, that chain of events that happens is insane. That's just accounts payable, right? Accounts receivable is the same situation. Order to cash. From the time someone places an order, from the time that we get cash, what does that process look like? How many different data steps happen? How many times does it change hands? It's incredible. It's insane. Right. And most of it's happening through drag and drop and copy and paste and other crazily inefficient methods. And even if this is the other thing is, if I'm in like the office of the CFO specifically, most of these organizations are a little bit siloed. So you got taxes and tax, accounting is accounting. Even AR and AP can be separate, but a lot of times they all work, one, with the same systems, two, they pass data back and forth to one another, and a lot of times those integration points aren't good. So my payroll system might not talk directly to my GL, and so the way that data is getting in, I'm dropping it out of payroll, I'm massaging it, and I'm uploading it into like the financial system or whatever. And then then you think about, and that's just like a simple data integration point. Then the question is like, now how do I do large scale reporting on things like attrition and cost analysis and some of the real big things? Well, if all the basic building blocks are inefficient, now I have a question. Now I question your data quality. I start questioning like other aspects of it because the basic building blocks are pretty inefficient. Now to do some of this more complex analysis and do predictive analytics and forecasting and things that are what I would consider more exciting or fun. But if I was a leader in an organization, I would gut check myself, because a lot of clients we talk to are like, oh yeah, we've got that figured out. And what I always tell people is, you may think it's figured out because you're in leadership.
Right.
But when you ask a question to one of your managers or one of your directors, what is the ripple effect on that question?
Yeah, for sure.
So like we work a lot with vendors, and a chief revenue officer may say, hey, how are sales in specific segment, to their next person down? Well, that next person down just had a fire thrown directly in their lap. And so they start calling all their managers, who start calling all their managers, who start digging around in Salesforce, who start calling their reps to make sure that the pipeline is up to date, to make sure that, you know what I mean? And so all of these ripple effect questions, and a lot of that is based on whether or not, like how good are the underlying building blocks. And the truth is, most organizations, reconciliations, which should be pretty simple, compare this system to that system, compare the inputs to the outputs. Do they match? Because if they don't match, we have a problem. We did a process and payroll doesn't match what we paid. Well, that's a problem, but you have to check it, right? You can't just assume, well, probably what's in the payroll system is what we paid. Somebody's got to check these things at month end or whatever. And so if that stuff's not automated, which again, 100 out of 100 organizations I could walk into, and maybe they've got that one figured out, but there's something someone's doing. And a lot of times too, I tell people this all the time, the process that it's like, oh, that only takes 2 hours. But if your manager says, oh my God, I love what you did, can I get that every Monday?
Right.
Well, you just created yourself a manual 2-hour process every Monday.
Right.
And maybe that's not so bad, but then the next one on Wednesday, and then the next one comes on Friday, and then you get another one for Tuesday. And pretty soon these 2-hour manual processes start adding up. And then now your job is to do manual processes, grabbing data from 5 different places, putting it in a spreadsheet, and then putting it into PowerPoint and sending it to your manager. And who wants to do that? Nobody.
Right.
And
Yeah,
so
you're not
anyhow,
spending time on finding insight, and then they also the other thing is what's worse is I think to your point when organizations don't know what's possible from an automation standpoint, their next step might be to hire someone,
yeah,
you know,
increase FTE. Yeah,
right,
add a
to come in
headcount.
and take over all of that maintenance work, and so which is probably totally unnecessary.
Totally.
They just need to know what the capabilities are in terms of, creating workflows and automating processes. And I think this is a good segue into, I have to congratulate you. So in the same vein of creating workflows and automation and stuff, there's a tool that you were just a very popular one that you were just named Global Partner of the Year, I think it
Yeah,
was,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
for Alteryx, which can help with some of these things that Eric's talking about, Eric's firm was just named Global Partner of the Year at the last. What was the event where they
They
awarded
call
you?
it All Rise. It's their global kickoff for the year. So
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
yeah,
So it's a huge, huge honor.
yeah,
There's I would imagine many, many partners out there doing this kind of stuff. And for you to get the global partner of the year is really impressive. So congrats to you and your firm on that.
yeah. No, man, it's huge. The partnership with Alteryx. If anybody who doesn't know what Alteryx is, I would tell you, one, you should know what it is. Two,
I
don't
would agree with
discount it.
that.
Don't
Yes.
discount it. Don't discount it. Don't look at it and think it's an ETL tool. Don't look at it and say you could do the same stuff in Python or SQL.
Yep.
Those are probably true, but we have a lot of data scientists on our team who also use Alteryx. It's not a Python or Alteryx question. It's in a lot of cases it's both. And the thing about Alteryx, and so we've been working with them for now I think 6 years, and our partnership has continued to grow and flourish. The difference with Alteryx, the thing that I didn't understand, and coming from IT and having worked with Informatica and other ETL type tools, is if you think about BI, you had back in the day, you had business objects, MicroStrategy, Cognos, Crystal Decisions before they were bought by Business Objects, right? Actuate, a couple of other tools out there, SSRS. Those were all IT tools. The business didn't use them, and even if you tried to get the business to use them, when I worked at Cognos, we used to say all the time that end users can develop their own reports. They didn't. They didn't do it. And they didn't do it until a little tiny desktop tool called Tableau came along. And all of a sudden, it's almost like this chat GPT stuff is like one day I'd never heard of Tableau. And the next day I can't stop hearing about Tableau.
Right. Yep.
And I looked at it as an IT person and I'm like, well, this is a desktop pivot table tool. I don't even get it. Like, big deal. You put your spreadsheet in there and then you can slice and dice it. You could do that in Excel already.
Mm-hmm.
You could do that in Cognos, right? Just put it in Cognos, build a framework manager model, and then publish the framework manager model as a package and go into Report Studio and build your stuff. How hard is that? For me, not hard. For the end users in accounting and tax and finance and HR and that sort of stuff, very difficult. Not their skill set. They
Right.
didn't go to school for it. That wasn't their passion. They went for something else. And so what I would tell you about Alteryx is it's the first tool that gives ETL-like capabilities to a set of users that have never had ETL-like capabilities before.
Yep.
And right now, there's no one else who touches it. I get asked all the time by clients, hey, if I want to replace Alteryx, what am I going to replace it with? And I say, I can give you the list and we can go through it and we can check every single one and run it through your end users. Power Query, it's too hard. They're not going to do it, too codey. Tableau Prep, love Tableau. Tableau Prep, for a lot of clients, it taps out after a little bit. And when you look at Alteryx, it's crazy. It's crazy. I've never seen end users be so successful with what I consider kind of a nerdy tool, right? It's an ETL-like tool.
Mm-hmm.
And to see accountants using ETL tools and see tax people, and it's fascinating. So moral of the story is we found it for some clients. We implement ERP systems as well. And as we do ERP implementations, what do you do? Step one. Well, I've got to pull the data out of the old system. I got to look at it. I got to clean it up a bit. I got to rejigger it. And then I've got to load it into the new system and then test it and then iterate back through. So go back to the source system, pull the data again, rejigger it a slightly different way, load it again, test it. Nope, still not quite right. Go back, make changes in the source system, pull it out. It's a very iterative process to implement ERP systems. We implement a lot of Workday Adaptive Planning, Blackline, and all of those require data from other places. And to implement it, to drop that stuff to Excel or even to pump it out via SQL and then move it into another system, or try to get a client to use a big ETL tool was a very complicated situation. And so we started using it for that, and then we started using it for some internal stuff. And the truth was, it was so easy. It was so much easier to get quick time to value than anything else we were using. Sound like an Alteryx fanboy, and the truth is I kind of am. But so that you take that as the baseline. But the other piece of Alteryx, and the reason I say you shouldn't sleep on it, is if let's say you're a data scientist. I talk to a lot of IT people, a lot of data scientists, and a lot of them will immediately say, well, I could do this in Python, or I could do this in this, or I could do it in that, or I could do it in whatever. And the truth is, you could do it. You could, Python developer. Do you want to be doing basic data acquisition, basic data cleanup, and basic data blending? Is that the job you want? It's not. So now you can have somebody else do that work, be that somebody more junior than you, somebody who doesn't know Python and doesn't know data science as well as you, or somebody even in the business. If marketing's trying to get you to do a data science thing, maybe you let marketing go get the data the way you need it. You tell them, here's the format I want it in, and then you use that as an input to your models. So this idea that you have to do everything in Alteryx, or you have to do everything in Tableau, or you have to do everything in any of these tools, or Python, whatever, it's just not, it's not right. So you need to take the right person, the right tool, the right project, the right reason, and you put it all together. I tell people, you can pound in screws with a hammer. You can pound in nails with a screwdriver. No one would tell you that that was your best option if both tools were available to you. So you pick the right tool for the job. If it's a screw, you pick a screwdriver. If it's a nail, you pick a hammer. And frankly, what I would tell you is, I look at Excel as kind of like the old handsaw. You can do anything with Excel, right? You can do anything with handsaws too. Well, then all of a sudden power saws came along and people stopped using handsaws so much. That's not to say people don't still have handsaws. If you're a woodworker or whatever, I bet you go out to your shop, you still have handsaws. But majority of what you do is using battery operated power tools or plug-in power tools. So we're not going to throw away Excel. We're not going to throw away Python. We're not going to throw away any of these things, but we need to have them in the toolbox, understand what they do, know when to use them, know who to use them with and for. And in a lot of cases, like, pardon me, moving back to Alteryx, is if I can get the business to support it, the business to understand it, I'll tell you too, one of the hardest things in IT has always been getting proper requirements. If you can get proper requirements, can you get and build designs? And then the hardest one is, can you get test cases so that you can actually test that it's working appropriately? If you have an accounting team build their reconciliation in Alteryx, you have a diagram of what the process looks like. You have every single function, formula, filter that they use. So you've got the physical design right in front of you, and you've got the output, which is your test case. They've already tested it. They know it works. So now, whether you as IT or whomever take that and productionize it in Alteryx, or you take that and you put it in something else, I've never seen better documentation and better design than when a user builds it and it works, and they don't tell me, oh, actually that data's not quite right, and then we've got to go fight through it all and figure out why. So anyway, it's been a blast. It's been a really fun journey with those guys.
That's awesome. And it's a really good point in that, not only is this automation enable that kind of the business user level or the non-technical user level, something they wouldn't have been able to do without a tool like Alteryx. It also enables this almost documentation creation by default, which documentation, in the data and analytics world is notoriously known to be either lacking or a pain point, and so that's a good point. I definitely had not thought of that one. I really like that example. I'm curious, you've worked with all of these, clients across different industries, and you mentioned, there's a lot of good use cases if you're a CFO. Are there any use cases? I know we have to be sensitive to your client base and everything. Are there any use cases that you can speak generally of that you think are really cool, stand out, added a lot of value back to a business that you can share with folks that might be interested?
Tons of them. I mean, one of the beauties of data analytics technologies, process automation is they work for every functional area. So we have people on staff who are experts in HR. And so when you think about onboarding and offboarding people, right? When you even before that, when you think about recruiting and the number of resumes some of these companies get and how they go through those resumes, and then when they have a resume they like, how do they set up the interview? How does the interview go through the process? And then how does that person become an employee? How do they get onboarded? And then what is the life cycle of that employee from the time that they're there until the time that they're no longer with the company, and all the different reviews and everything else that happens. And that's one specific process. Now the question is how automated is that process, and can we make that process more efficient? And the answer is probably yes. Then you take that in aggregate. If you've got thousands of employees, you're going to have things like attrition. You're going to have things like the cost of the employees, how efficient the employees are. In this day and in this situation that we're in right now, you're seeing a lot of tech layoffs. Well, you better hope somebody did some analysis before they made the decision as to who was going to stay and who was going to go. So you take something like HR and the amount of analysis that you can do around cost, headcount analysis, attrition, your overall corporate culture, how into this are people, what do people want to be doing, how do you retain the right people and not keep the wrong people, all that. That's HR. So I mean, we've done so many HR dashboards for chief human resource officers, CHROs, workforce analytics stuff. That's just one. Under the office of the CFO, if you look at like audit, internal audit specifically, you've got things like continuous audit, where if you don't know about audit, you go in, you run an audit, just like you would have if you got audited on your taxes. They do it once, and they don't come back. Hopefully, right? The IRS doesn't come back the next year. They audit you one time. You are a sample. But what if I could just turn something on that would continuously audit you every single day, every week, every month,
Sure.
every year? And so when you look at things like fraud detection, and you look at different things that are happening anomalous in the business, expenses, making sure that expenses are always tracked appropriately. Another thing in audit that we look for is if you're the one to submit it, you can't be the one to approve it. And if you're the one that approves it, you can't be the one to pay it. And so we've got to make sure that chain of command is followed appropriately. In IT audit, same sort of idea. If I built it, I can't put it into production, right? Like somebody else has to do that sort of stuff. And so when you look at like SOC 1, SOC 2, and SOX compliance, all of those things, those have to be audited. And you can audit in what's called a sample, where you just take a little bit and you look at it and you say, yep, everything's okay with those invoices or those expenses. But now if I wanted to do every single invoice in the company, and we have millions of invoices, that's a lot to try to tackle. And so you need to give these people bigger tools, more powerful tools for more data. And then I want to be able to just schedule that to run every day. So that's where you get into what's called full population and continuous audit. When you look in accounts payable, accounts receivable, we talked about that. If I'm getting PDFs, I don't want to be hand keying. You should see how many companies hand key things off of things like PDFs and other documents into an expense system or an invoicing system. I just want to scrape the PDF. I want to digitize the PDF. I want to pull the data off the PDF, and I want to automatically put it in. And I want to alert you about the outliers, right? If I can get you to 90%, 80% efficiency on that, but then there's going to be 20 of them that come in and they're scanned kind of goofy, as somebody hand wrote something on the PDF, right? Maybe there's going to be stuff that falls out. But now you're only looking at 20% hand keying, 20%, only the outliers. You're not doing the majority. So every single part of the organization, every part, sales operations, from the time somebody closes a deal in your CRM like Salesforce to the time that it gets quoted and invoiced and all that. How are you doing that? And then how are you going back and analyzing it? Because if you're doing it hundreds or thousands of times, how do you keep your CRM clean? Salespeople, I always joke about this, salespeople are the worst. The last thing they are is detail oriented as it relates to like typing in things into a computer. That's not what they care about. They're out there meeting people, trying to figure out how to do big deals.
Sure.
So they're not putting in the right state. They're not putting in the right zip code. They're not putting in the right, all kinds of things they're not filling out properly. They're marking things tax exempt when they're not. And so now when that happens at scale, how can we keep up with it if we have thousands of these things happening at the same time? So
especially considering there's great value to the organization to have those data points, even though you're absolutely right. It's not always, you don't always have the right person, that's working on that stuff.
And you also have to think there's two sides. There's the scary side, which is compliance, risk, audit, right? Like if we have a data breach, or if people mark things tax exempt and it turns out they aren't, we get this huge fine. Or we don't file our
Sure.
taxes on
Yeah.
time, and we don't file our taxes on time because we didn't have the accounting wasn't closed, and accounting wasn't closed because of all the downstream things that accounting's waiting for,
Right.
right? So that's the scary part. And that's just, and like, if you don't have that streamlined, which most people don't, that's a disaster. But then you think about all the value we're missing because no one's going back in and analyzing those things for the proper reasons. What are the highest, like if we're doing 100,000 or 100,000 sales every single day, week, quarter, month, whatever, what are the highest value ones? How could
Mhm.
we, if we do 10 of these, how could we turn the 10 really high profit ones into 100 instead of just focusing on the fact we did 10? So that's
Sure.
when you start looking at real analytics, and it's like, now that we can, and when you've got too much data, it's really hard to even figure out what to do. Now with these tools that we have today, we can figure it out, and then we can start prescribing, hey, let's never do another transaction like this again. Congratulations, you sold this thing, but it was a loss leader. We actually lost money on this. We don't even want to sell that anymore. We want to focus over here where the high value stuff is. And so, as you first of all shore up your operations and really tighten things up, so you're not hiring more people just to do crappy, you know, slow processes because it takes 2 hours every Monday morning. Once you get that down to a button click or it's just scheduled, then it's like, now let's start really ramping this up. And I think a
Mhm.
lot of your audience is more focused on that part. But it's like, if
Mhm.
the data's not right, if the data's not there, none of our data scientists can do much anything. And that's a lot of the data science projects I come into. It's like, step one, you got to fix a lot of things. We can't do predictive things if you're not tracking the things to begin with. You don't know
Mhm.
where the customer's from. You don't know the customer's age. You don't know the customer's race. You don't know the customer's
Mhm.
anything else about the customer. If you know nothing about the customer, and then you ask me, hey, where should I spend my marketing dollars? Well, the answer is, I have no idea.
Mhm.
I don't have the background data that I would need in order to help build you clusters of populations to go after, because you don't have it to begin with. And so, the thing is I tell people this with data science all the time. Well, all I'm doing is I'm teaching the computer to have a memory, but the memory requires, and wisdom, really, right? Experience. But if I gave you right now just a list of student IDs and I said, tell me which of these students are going to drop out of college or high school or whatever, right? You're not going to know. It's just a list of student IDs. If I give you their GPA, now all of a sudden you'd be like, oh, okay, well, I know that a 2.0 is bad. A 1.0 is even worse. A 0.0, this kid's definitely not graduating. And a 4.0, kid will probably graduate. Okay, that's fine. Now I give you their attendance and I give you their grades in every single one of their classes, right? And now if I give you, 100 kids, because you know something about going through school, but the computer doesn't know any of that.
Mhm.
So I have to feed hundreds of thousands of prior kids and what their grade point averages were and what their attendance was and what all their test scores were and everything else about them. And I've got to feed that into the model so that the model knows anything about K through 12 and graduation
Sure.
in order to do it. But if I don't track that stuff, then I can't do it, no matter what tool I have. So then we have to go back to the basics of, okay, well, let's go figure out how to capture it. And then once we have enough history, or if we can get it from another area or another district or something in the case of K-12, maybe we can conjure something up. But yeah.
That's yeah, absolutely. I'm curious as we were talking about the audience that's listening, I think this is going to be really enlightening to some of there's definitely some, business leaders that listen, that I think are trying to get a feel for what's possible and what things they should be thinking about investing in. And I think that you've painted a clear picture of kind of where you can get some efficiency gains and open up some new opportunities, such as with the continuous audit example, where you wouldn't be able to do that just by sheer manpower. Probably you need to have some automation. But I think also there's a part of the audience that's, they're maybe newer to the field or they're looking to move up in the field. And to that side of things, I think, there's all kinds of use cases for folks that are in that boat for an Alteryx, but I think that they might benefit from hearing from you, as someone that moved from corporate roles into consulting and leadership in consulting, what was it that kind of enticed you to make this move into doing what you're doing now versus going and, working within the context of one single company?
Uh, part of my problem is that my life is a continuous improvement project, just like all the
Yeah.
projects we work on.
Yeah.
So So part of it is, what do you want? Like, you really have to gut check yourself on what you want, what drives you, what makes you happy. There's plenty of people who will be individual contributors their entire careers, can be perfectly happy and have a perfect happy retirement, and will
Hmm.
never be in management. Be careful what you wish for. Management might feel like the next step in the rung. Doesn't mean you're going to be happy doing it. It just
Sure.
means you're going to have different headaches.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it is you have to really gut check yourself. What do you want? Um, and and then you have to put a plan in place that'll get you there. The truth is everybody, myself included, I want people who are obviously sharp folks, but more than that, that are highly motivated, that are doing things for the right reasons, that are passionate about this stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of jobs that I could probably suffer through. Like, I could be an accountant. I'm sure I could, right? My math skills are pretty solid. I understand the concepts, but I don't think I would be happy. And that's not because there's anything wrong with accounting. There's plenty of accountants that are super happy. I work with them all the time, but that's not for me. And you have to really, I think, look yourself in the mirror and figure out what are you really trying to do, and is what you're picking going to make you happy, or is because just because it's going to make you more money doesn't mean it's going to make you happier.
Yeah.
Just because you have more people who report to you does not mean it's going to make you happier.
Sure.
And what I would tell you, if thinking about things like moving up in your career, again, I think always asking for what's next and how you get there, never being satisfied with where you're at. Not to the point of annoyance, but ask. I don't know my people want a different role unless they ask me. I always
Right.
tell everybody, like, the worst thing that could happen is somebody leaves and I don't know why.
Right.
It's like, that's terrible, right? Shame on me, shame on that person. Like, well, it turns out they really wanted to do more Snowflake. Well, why didn't you say something? We do Snowflake. We could have had you do more Snowflake. I wanted to do more demos. Why didn't you say something? If you want to do more demos, we do plenty of demos. We could have you do demos. I want to do more Alteryx, more Python, more C, whatever. Like, I always tell everybody, if you want to start a coffee shop, I'm not your guy. Like, I can't help you. I'll high five you, wish you well, and hope your coffee shop does amazingly. But that's not what I can help with. So you have to figure out who can help you, who has the interest. Do you really have the desire to do this sort of stuff, or do you just feel like for some reason you want to do it to climb the corporate ladder? Like, I think you really have to gut check yourself, and then make sure everybody knows it's what you want. And just and I would leave if you've told people, and I've told people in my career what I
Yeah.
wanted, and and like got sort of that, oh yeah, it'll just give it a little time or whatever, and then I gave it a little time and it still wasn't happening. I couldn't see the trajectory I wanted. Well, I left. I would say give your company or whomever the ability to let you down. So make sure they know. And then when you leave and they ask you in an exit interview, why did you leave? You say, I told you 6 months ago I was leaving. I didn't say I was leaving, but I told you 6 months ago I want to do something different. I'm still doing the same thing. It's not what I want.
Sure.
So I think that's a lot of it. Knowing what you want, going after it, being vocal about it. Don't be scared about asking for things or trying to do something different. If you've got a manager right now, if you go and ask to do something different or something more like that's more of your interest, and anything other than let me figure out how to help you get there is the answer, you should probably figure out how to get the hell out of there. Like, that's a wrong people to work for. It's a wrong place to be. If it's just your direct manager, go above that person. But yeah, now you've got to figure out what you want. You got to try things. You got to try things and fail all the time. I always tell my team, like, try it. If it sucks, we won't do it again, right? If we try it and we fail, we will learn from it. We'll pick it up and we'll move on. And that includes in your career. I think if you try something, say you try your hand at sales, and it turns out you just hate it, which
Hmm.
a lot of people probably would. Maybe people even already know they would. But if you think you might like it, go try it. If you
Sure.
think you might like having a podcast, go try it. See how easy it is. See how
Yeah.
easy it is to get people to come on your Data Ideas podcast
It's
all the time.
amazing,
It's
isn't
hard.
it? Yeah.
Yeah. All you have to do is throw stuff on LinkedIn, right?
That's
Dustin,
right.
isn't that it? Yeah. Just throw stuff on LinkedIn. You'll become an influencer. It's not easy. None of this stuff is easy. If it's worth doing, it's not going to be easy. So you've got to put the effort and the time in, and you've got to pave your path.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and you hit on the self-advocacy part too. I think that sometimes, especially in our field, folks might have this perception that it's a bad thing to advocate for yourself. But I would argue that actually your employers actually need you to advocate for yourself. They hired you as an expert, in this particular field. They don't know everything that there is to know about analytics. And part of your job is to advocate for the work that you're doing, because it's going to be mutually beneficial to your own career, but also to the company as well, because they don't know what's possible. That's why part of the reason why you're there is to show them, right? And so
Yeah.
I definitely agree with you on the self advocacy part. I'm curious, what for you, Eric, as a leader of a consulting firm, what is it that you personally, if folks kind of want to understand, what you like more about consulting versus working within a company, what is it that you like personally about consulting?
And this is another thing, and I talk about this when I talk at colleges, is this is another thing that you may or may not. Consulting is fast. That's what I like about it. It's fast and it's intense, and there's a little bit less forgiveness because you're expected to be an expert.
Sure.
Likely, your rates are relatively high, and
Yeah.
so you're coming in with there's an expectation. You're,
Expectation.
you're
Yeah.
usually coming in because there's a problem, right?
Sure.
Like when I call a plumber, I don't expect them to get there and try to figure out what a toilet is, right? I expect a level of
Right.
knowledge about this because I don't
Yeah.
have it. That's why I
Yeah.
called you.
You're not offering to train them.
No, that's not what's
Yeah.
happening here. And so I think the people who love it love working in fast pace. It's always changing. Um, there's a lot less politics because
Sure.
we're an external firm, right? It's like if there's infighting at the company, like it really doesn't matter to me. I just come
Right.
in and I'm here to do a job. Like you guys figure that out. I'm not here for any of that. And so there's that. Now there's flip side of that coin too is sometimes you can feel a little bit more on an island, right? You're not part of that company. And so some companies will make you feel like more of a team member and than others and whatever.
Yep.
So it's faster. You get to move around a lot. So one of my consultants will be doing an HR project this month, and then an accounting project next month, and then a tax project the month after that. And that for some people is really fun. Now for other people, it's very scary. We're always talking, right? We're expected to be the ones that go up to the whiteboard and start writing. And again, not all. I'm talking about consulting more so
Yep.
than like development contractors.
Yep.
But in a lot of cases, for at least my company specifically, that's why I've always enjoyed it. Is it's fast paced, it's always moving, it's always different. If I don't like today's project, I just wait a little bit and I'll be on a totally different project for something else. Um, and for the right people, it's really hard to ever go somewhere else. It's hard to
I can
go
imagine.
to go back to slow and steady wins the race. We're all in this together, and there's a mission and a vision, and it's a 10-year thing, and here's my cubicle, and I'm gonna, I only have to work 8 hours. I mean, that's another one, right? So we sometimes we work a lot of hours
Yeah.
in consulting, and you got to be somewhat prepared for some of that too.
Yeah.
But at the same time, at least I Capitalize, I believe in work-life balance. I believe in work hard, play hard. There's a lot of things that we do to make sure that we don't burn people out, that people know that they're highly valued. Probably you make more money in consulting than you do not in consulting, to be honest, right?
Oh,
So
cool. So that's a perfect segue into kind of in closing here. How can folks learn if they're interested in consulting and maybe doing it for your company? How can they learn more about Capitalize and the types of positions that you have?
sure. Yeah, again, I was Capitalize specifically. You can go to our website, capitalizeconsulting.com or capitalizeanalytics.com, take you to the same place. And then there's a careers area. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can reach out to HR@capitalizeconsulting.com, where I try to make it easy for people to get a hold of me and to get what they need.
Yeah.
Then it's a question of fit, right? And for me, there's nothing worse for anybody than hiring the wrong person, because
Yeah.
either because that person's not happy or because we're not happy. Either way,
Yeah.
it ends up very poorly for people, right? So
Yeah.
I take the interview process. It's much less for me about us figuring out if you're good enough. It's much more about us figuring out if together we're better than we are separately.
Cool.
And so that's the big one. But we're always hiring. We grew like 70% last year, and we also hire pretty I would say cautiously, because I want to be here in 10 more years. I don't want this to be the end. You know what I'm saying? So,
Right.
so we,
Yeah.
can't, we can't over leverage. You look at some of the stuff that's been happening recently,
Yeah.
where you're unprofitable. We've not been unprofitable ever. And
That's
part of
awesome.
that is you have to be able to pay the bills, you have to be able to pay the vendors, you have to be able to pay your people. So we hire a lot, we hire fast, but at the same time, we do it in a way that we feel like is balanced with reality, and make sure that we actually have
Cool.
work to do. But yeah, and as far as getting into any of this, whether it's for a company or for a consulting firm or whatever, again, I think part of it is make sure they understand your value, what your vision is for you. If you go into an interview and all you're going to do is answer my questions, then that's not a partnership. And to
Right.
me, I'm looking for, and I can't tell you everybody, but I think most hiring managers will tell you, I'm hoping that we come up with a partnership out of this, right? So I
Yep.
want your idea just as much as I want to hear what you have to respond to
For
me.
sure.
And so coming prepared, not just with questions either, and like all the like hokey questions that you might think of, is like, where's the company going to be in 5 years? Blah blah blah. I think it has to be more than that. Dig into the website, understand the company, figure out what their core values are. Ask about those. Ask about the vendors and like which are their top vendors. In the case of like if I'm thinking about Capitalize, now everybody's going to ask me the same questions I just told you. But dig in and try to figure out what the company's all about, and want to talk to other people. Ask to talk to more people, because the more if I hired everybody off of a conversation with me, you probably right now have a pretty good idea of my personality. It's pretty
Yep.
intense. Not everyone who works at Capitalize is like me.
Sure.
So you want to get a feeling for quite a few different people before you decide to pull the trigger and go somewhere.
Yep.
So yeah,
Cool.
does that help?
Yeah, it does, and I think that'll be super beneficial to, quite a few people listening. I'm curious, and then on the side of folks that might be listening, business leaders and folks that are interested in, some of the automation work that you mentioned. What's the best way for them to learn more about that? Is it following you or your company on social media, or what would you recommend?
I mean, the fastest thing is for what we do specifically is go to our website. It's got everything on there. And then specifically for anybody out there who wants to know about how this stuff really works, we have a webinars tab at the top of our website that's got pretty much every technology, every functional area we're working. Most of them are about an hour long.
Cool.
You can go, they're embedded right there. You can go see it. And then as soon as you want to talk to someone, to me, I can't prescribe a solution to anybody without speaking to them about their situation. Like that's the most
Hmm.
arrogant thing ever. I can't tell you if Capitalize is the best place to work. I can't tell you if UiPath or Alteryx or Tableau is right for you or your
Right.
project unless we talk about your situation specifically.
Yep.
And I have no interest in selling things to people who don't need it. I have no interest in doing projects that aren't going to be successful.
Hmm.
That's just there's a world too big for that. I
Hmm.
got plenty of on my plate. So if you're interested and you actually want to talk about your situation, whether it's accounting, finance, tax, HR, or operations, wherever, don't be scared, at least with Capitalize, to just hit us up. There's a chat box. As soon as you open our website, you can chat with us and it'll send it to us, and
Cool.
um, any of that. So LinkedIn's great. Our website's great. But if we're if we're hard to find, we're doing something wrong. So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
It definitely is easy to find you guys. I do know. I do know that.
One of
Um,
my one of my biggest claims to fame, at least for the moment. Now, if someone's going to try to, I shouldn't even say this. But if you Google what is Alteryx, I think we're like number one or number
oh,
two.
really?
Yeah, which is pretty fun.
That's
So
awesome.
now I'm going to have all the SEO kids trying to take that away from me. But that's right.
Hey, but there's a good challenge for folks that are listening that are
Yeah,
interested or want to
there you
test
go.
that. Go
Yeah,
ahead and
yeah.
take it.
Well, and
Yeah.
I'd like to have more number ones and number twos. So if there's any SEO people out there, go look at the website. If you can help me out there,
Oh,
I'm more than happy to hear your ideas.
very cool. I like it. And also, I would recommend that folks follow you on LinkedIn. Eric is, pretty active on there. And I will say is also, I know, very responsive to folks that comment on things on there. And so, you're just a easy guy to engage with on there from my perspective. So I'd
I
recommend that
appreciate
folks
it.
follow you. Yeah. And
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
put all these links for everyone listening. If you're out on the road or you're working out or whatever, the links will be down in the show notes that Eric just talked to. So you can go back to your computer, you can click on the links and look at any of the resources he just mentioned. So thank you so much, Eric, for joining. This has been fun.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I like doing it. I'm passionate about the material, so happy to do it anytime.
For sure. Awesome. Thanks so much. And we'll see everyone back next Thursday for the next episode. Take care. Thanks, Eric.
Yep.